In Erie, we see actually more advanced industries, and particularly manufacturing, present than statewide and nationwide. So we were able to release a report back in 2015 or 16. I'll have to check the date on that. But it was taking a look at a Brookings report that called attention to the importance of advanced industries and why those mattered. And we wanted to take a look at those present in the Erie area. And that's where we found that we actually have a greater number of advanced industries per capita than state and national. And now manufacturing still comprises a larger portion, both state and national, in Erie than it does elsewhere. So it still accounts for more eggs in our overall basket, but we are diversifying, much like I would say our cousin city in Western Pennsylvania to the south, Pittsburgh, with an uptick of meds and eds and growing differently so that we're not a monolithic industry, thinking of Detroit or thinking with the automobile industry, thinking of Akron with rubber, thinking of other cities and metros that had built their entire economy around one thing. We have not done that. So in Erie, you can actually find a small advanced manufacturing firm called Hero BX, which produces biodiesel fuel, produces more than 90% of the biodiesel fuel used on the Great Lakes watershed. It's a company that when we published the report had employees less than 100. That may have changed now. It's still a smaller company, but their economic impact for the region is pretty significant. It used to be looking at the impact of a place like General Electric Transportation, and not just accounting for the number of jobs and the number of people employed at General Electric Transportation, but looking at the other jobs affected by that. And that was pretty significant. And of course, that's changed over time. At the turn of the 20th century, GE decided to establish its headquarters in Erie, Pennsylvania, actually in the Lawrence Park Township. But after its heyday in the 60s, things have waned. And that's for a number of reasons. Globalization, as well as establishing other facilities in right to work states, like the Fort Worth plant in Texas. Jobs have continued to shift and move. Automation has obviously played a key role in that as well. So we've seen the erosion of those jobs and that those can no longer be depended upon. And then eventually the relocation of the headquarters of GE to Chicago in 2012. I want to say I'll get you all the dates, whatever you need. But I'm thinking it was around that time they relocated the headquarters. But since then, GE has been purchased by Wabtec, bringing it somewhat back regionally. Wabtec being headquartered in Pittsburgh. But still producing impressive locomotives, but not at a human capital scale that it once had in terms of employment. So focusing on what we do as a think tank, we provide conversations for the community to have and think about that, to advance conversations. It's better to be thinking about your future today than wondering about your present tomorrow or your past tomorrow and getting caught up in what happened. And I think that shocked Erie a bit in the 1960s in particular. So the city of Erie is actually built out infrastructurally to house 150,000 people. At its peak, Erie had about 138,000 people, and that was in the late 60s. And then for a number of reasons, urban flight, white flight out of the city into the suburbs, the city has been steadily losing population ever since, now hovering anywhere between 92,000 on a low end, maybe, to 97,000 on a high end. Somewhere, I think I haven't seen the census data come out yet, but we know we're under 100,000. And that's been troubling. At the same time, the county has been bleeding population, but not at the same rate. So overall, our MSA, which is the county, is continuing to lose population. So rethinking work and rethinking jobs in the economy is something important. So the Jefferson provides a conversation space for us to envision, what we could be by entertaining conversations on economic development, doing reports on economic development, and having reports and conversations on the future of work. Part of what we can do at the JES is we can help speed up the import of ideas to a community like ours to have conversations that are happening elsewhere. And we have the luxury and benefit of looking at other places that have laid out a roadmap to say, is this scalable? And can we do it here? What did they get right, and how might we replicate that and model that? What did they get wrong, and how might we avoid those pitfalls, those challenges that they encountered? So one that I think of is, the importance of things like innovation districts, in a region. And so we were able to have programming built around, the importance of the impact that innovation districts have in small to mid-sized metros and large metros as well. So taking a look at that is an important thing for Erie that then led to stakeholders in the community wanting to pursue, how might an innovation district be created? And we're talking in this sense, we're thinking more of the downtown heart of the city innovation districts and not the industrial park innovation districts, because it would be important to acknowledge that on the campus of Penn State Barron, you would find all the makings of an innovation district there. Now at Knowledge Park, somewhat isolated from the rest of a downtown, and while serving a great function and doing great work, certainly tremendous out there. The school of thought for having an innovation district in a downtown is the idea that you get the bumpability with everything else that is happening there. What we had heard that had become a buzzword, over the years was silo, silo, silo,
Yeah.
silo, and I'm not saying Barron's did that. I don't think they did. I think that they're actually very inclusive and they work to invite people. I think their open source pledge, I think all of their work around intellectual property is just fascinating and to be applauded. However, traditionally, these industrial park innovation districts can tend to become fiefdoms unto themselves. And, you're only bumping into the same people at the same place, and you drive to work, you drive home, and you don't really have that engagement interaction. So that's one. So being able to, challenge Erie to dream of the potential impact of an innovation district and what it might do and how it might operate, and then utilizing our think tank to think tank networking to bring in scholars such as Bruce Katz, who was at that time with Brookings, now the new localism advisors out of Drexel University, to help coach through that process. So we were able to facilitate that, with the community, to say, we can be a neutral broker or neutral arbiter in a conversation like that. Similarly, when you take a look at comprehensive planning and the importance that that has to a city and to a region, plans are one thing, actions are another. And Erie went through an extensive comprehensive planning process that yielded Erie Refocused, which,
Yeah.
upon its publication was heralded as, like the most important thing ever written about us. I mean, that's hyperbole, but, it gripped people. It grabbed them by, the coattails and, and the collars and got their attention. But there wasn't an active government role in then executing that. And one of the things people bemoan all the time is that, plans are done, plans are celebrated, and then they go on a shelf and they collect dust. We've heard that, and that's not a story, specific to Erie. We hear that about the fear, from a lot of places that nothing will come of it. So as our role as a think tank, we can have conversations around that. So we brought in the authors of Erie Refocused and asked them, okay, you've issued this. We've had like a year to sit with it and nothing's really happening. Tell us how this works in other places. And we invited the community into that conversation in two ways. One, Brookings model for holding programming. We call it the Metro 100. The idea is that you get your, and 100's an arbitrary number. It sounds cool. But you get your top influencers, your community stakeholders, your movers, your shakers, all into a room to talk about a common subject, and really beat it up over the course of a day, in this sort of hackathon style programming of, you're thinking through it, and allowing the space to have conversations. But then an important part too is providing the public component, to have the public dialogue around that as well, to not lock out the community, to make sure the barrier of access is lowered. And so we were able to do that too. And of course, what came out of there, and has been referenced a couple of times in the Erie Times News, is sitting in the room was President and CEO of Erie Insurance, Tim Nicastro, who was wondering what industry could do in advancing a comp plan and getting to work. And so he approached Charles Buki, the principal at CZB, the firm that drafted Erie Refocused, and said, "What can we do?" And Charles gave him a number of suggestions at the Jefferson, and then pointed to 3CDC, which is a development corporation in Cincinnati, and said that this might be a good analog, for Erie to take a look at if you're to develop a development corporation, and this can actually carry out some of what you're looking to do if you don't have a strong partner or strong interest coming from government. And certainly one thing led to another. Now we have the EDDC. We also have a change in the administration in Erie that is, more focused on economic development and more mindful of it, and working in partnership with the EDDC to rethink a downtown. So now you do have a true public-private partnership. Another famous buzzword, but you actually see that happening, and that's evidence of a conversation that started at the JES, where we could talk about that, and encourage the community to be thinking about it, and then continue to follow up on that throughout that process and timeline of dialogue.